So yeah, hi everyone. Good evening, and I really apologize for the delay. There was some technical issue. I was unable to join to my own meeting. So we'll quickly begin. So in the this is the session 2 of my SQL series. So what we did in the last session. Last session we were just talking about what is SQL, how how is it required for us to learn specifically as an MBA graduate. Why do we need to learn SQL? And then we also discussed about some of the basic commands like the DML, the DDL commands. Today, what we'll be doing is, firstly, we'll be creating one database on SQL Server. Last time, I also shared the procedure how to download it. If anyone of you have not downloaded it, you can download it after the class. I'll be just sharing the procedure of how to write the queries. You can follow it along as well. Second, we'll be importing our Excel database into the SQL Server, and then we'll be working upon the SQL queries as well, right? So I'll just quickly share my screen, and we'll just quickly create a database and install it. 1 second. Yeah, so is my screen visible? Can anyone please confirm?
Yes, it is visible.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. So yeah, this is what SQL Server looks like. So firstly, we have to create a database in this. So we go on the database option here. We left click, and there's an option to create a new database. Yeah. So you can name the database name, say SQL training or anything you want. And then we click on OK. So now the name of the database, you can see it here, SQL training has been created, right? So now we also need to import our Excel sheet into a database. Why do we need to do that? For example, a company was just working on Excel files throughout their lifetime. Now they want to migrate into the database structure. So this is the reason that that SQL Server gives us the option to migrate our Excel file into the database as well. So firstly, I'd like to show you on which sheet would we be working on. So this is the global superstore data we'll be working on. So yeah, this has few rows, about 10,000 rows. We have it here. And there are few columns in which all the details like the row ID, customer ID, shipping date. So this is a global store database. Furthermore, we'll be discussing more on that. So now we have to import this database or this sheet into our database as well. So we left click, right click here, and there's an option by the name of tasks. And then there's an option by the name of import data. So we click on that. So this window opens. We click on right next here. This process takes a bit of time, so there would be a lot of loading as well while you do it as well. So please, but don't exit it because it takes time. So here, what type of database are we trying to import here? So this is a flat Excel file. We click on Excel file. Then as usual, we can click on the browse button. So this is the button. Yeah, so there's one option here, first row as column names. This option, if many people have worked on Power Query as well, this option is also available, make first row as headers. So what does this option do? So in this option, like there is row ID, order date. This is a header, right? So we need to make it as a column name. This is the column name. So we need to click on this option. Then we click on next. And where do we want to import our data? It has to be SQL Server native client. If you download the latest version of it, it can be native client 12.0 as well. But we have to keep in mind it has to be to the native client, the important files which we are doing. Then we click on next here again. So it's showing not responding. I don't know what's the error here. Just give me a moment. I'll check. Yeah. So next, we'll click on next. We'll not change anything here. We'll just click on next again. We'll click on the ordered date sheet here. So it will be show as dbo.orders. There is one option to change the schema as well. We'll not be touching the schema here, but I'm just showing you the option. You click on edit mapping. And here, see, you can change the type, like whatever order date you want to date is at date time or just the date. You can change that as well. So we'll be just be clicking on OK. We'll not be touch basing upon that. So next, run immediately. We click on again next, and then the finish part. So yeah, it's success. Now it has been imported. You can see it here on the tables. Meanwhile, to write the query part, we always click on new query at the top. So this is the window where we will be writing our queries. So starting with the query part, few of the things which I would like to pre-mention it to you. First of all, SQL is not case sensitive. For example, if you write select, it will still accept. If you write select in smaller letters, it will still accept. If you write SEL and you want to CET, it will still work. So it's not case sensitive, but it's always advisable to write it in one format and follow it throughout your query. So the format which I follow is that every keyword, this select is a keyword. It's also in the last class as we discussed, it's also DML command. So every keyword which I use, I keep it in an uppercase, and rest of the queries I try to keep it in the lowercase. So discussing the first SQL statement, which is select here. So what does select do? Like I mentioned in the last class, it's very much equal to English, like the English language we talk about. So for example, it's select. So we have to select what? Obviously, we'll be selecting a column, right? From. That's the name of the table which we'll be referring to. For example, there is a from where. It's used to how to filter the data. So the first thing which I practice is whenever I have to solve any query, any question comes, firstly, I want to see what is the table, what is the database looking like. So we click on star. Star gives you all the columns which are there throughout the database. And from is the name of the table to which we are referring. So as soon as we select that and we click on execute, this is how it works. So you see this is the result. And it is the same as what you see in the Excel file. So now we have successfully imported our Excel file into our database. So this select star from orders. So orders is the name of the table. Star is the name of all the columns which we want. For example, if we want just a specific column, we can write that column as well. Like for example, there's a column by the name of segment here. If we just want to see the segment part, we just write segment here, select segment from orders. So if we execute this, it will just show the segment column now. But it's always a right activity to choose. Firstly, have a look at the database or the table on which you're working, right? So always select star. First, have a look at the table and then think, what do we need to do? Yeah. So, for example, just a very common thing, there's a, like we'll be, in this session, we'll be comparing what the things which we can do in Excel vis-a-vis the things which we want to do in SQL Server as well. Like, for example, if we take, say, the segment part, there are three types of segments. You apply filter on the Excel sheet, you see there are consumer segment, corporate segment, home office segment, right? For this, if we want just the distinct values, we have say a unique function, right, in Excel. So we do a unique of the column and we'll get it. So this returns all the distinct columns which we have, all the distinct values which we have it in a particular column. For example, if we want to do the same thing in SQL, there's a keyword again for it. SQL, there are a number of keywords for all these functions. Like unique is a function which is there on Excel. Similarly, there are a number of things which are there on SQL as well. Like for this thing, we have distinct. So distinct by the name itself means that we just want the distinct values. So if we say distinct consumer, and we run this, oh, distinct segment, I beg your pardon. See, corporate, home office, consumer, same as what we got here, right? So, but if you see, like, it's just common English, right? In SQL, select this column from this table. So it is just common English. It is just that, as I mentioned in the last session as well, people are hesitant to learn SQL, but trust me, it's not difficult. Last evening only, I was speaking with my mentor, Havish sir. He'll be teaching you from tomorrow as well. So he was just saying that if you have any idea of any database if any tool you're working on, say it's Excel, say it's Power BI, say it's Nine, if you have any distinct idea as to what information you want, even if you don't know the tool, even if you don't know the language of it, if you have the correct logic, you will be able to work on any data tool. So, and as I mentioned, like see, SQL, it's again so easy, right? Just common English here we are referring. So this can work on any column you want. Say you want, like you want to mention the distinct categories that we have in this data. You execute it. There are 3 types of categories, right? So there are n number of opportunities here. Like, but you know, like for example, if we try here distinct star, what if we want distinct of every column? Any guesses what would this value return? Anyone? If we are to find the distinct of every column. Could you please show where to download this data set? So regarding the data set, Ananya, there's no such, like this data set, I downloaded it from Kaggle. There's one site, www.kaggle.com. So there's no dearth of data sets, right? You can download it from Kaggle as well. Even the government of India also provides number of data sets. So, if you want to work on any data set, you can download it elsewhere as well. So yeah, to answer this question, select distinct star. If we run this, it will return exactly the table that we have. The logic behind it is that it sees the distinct value in every column. For example, row 1, okay, it's a distinct value. Order ID, again, it's a distinct value. It will first return that. Now returning to the second row, 2 is again a distinct thing, followed by this, followed by this. So every time it will return all of the data set. So this is one of the very common question which is asked in the interviews as well for a entry level job for data analytics, that what does distinct star return? So this is the answer. It will return exactly the table that we had. Now coming down to the filters part. Yeah, so we all know that we can apply filters on Excel, like the Control Shift L we click on any cell and we have our filters, right? So what do filters do? If we want to filter any data, for example, for the segment part, we just want to see what a consumer segment is looking like. For example, you're a data analyst in a company and you're just interested in your consumer segment, like what type of products are getting sold, what subcategories are we getting from it, or what are the, most importantly, what is the total sales we are getting out of it. And similarly, you want to see for every segment. This is where the where clause comes in. Where clause. And just one more important thing, to add any comment in a SQL server, you just need to click on 2 hyphens and you can write anything you want just for your reference. So we again click on select. We click on star since we want all the columns here. Then we click on the from which table you want, that's the orders, and where. where the segment, the name of the column, which is segment, is equal to, since it's a string value, we always need to enclose it in a single quote. For example, where segment is equal to, say, consumer. See, now the segment here is only of the consumer part. So what the query has done here, it has filtered all the values where segment was equal to consumer, right? Or like we can do, there are endless things that we can do here, right? For example, we want that we want all the orders that were ordered, say, post 2019, like say in the year 2020. So what we can do here, we can write order date is greater than, again, all the string value and the date values are to be enclosed in a single quote. So we again do a single quote here, is greater than equal to, what would be the last date of 2021? That would be December 31st. 31st. Okay, there's no data. I think post that. Let's do 2022 then. See, so what it has done now, it is showing all the data to us after the year 2020. Now you see, if I scroll down, you would not find a single entry which has the year 2020 because we have filtered it down with the help of the where clause here. So you're getting it, right? That as a data analyst, how helpful this tool can be. This comment where clause can be, right? And we can also club a number of things as well. For example, you're interested in order date, which is greater than 2020, 12/31, and you also want to see the orders which are coming from the segment consumer. So there are two options here. One is the and clause, other is the or clause. So it's a very simple. So what does the and clause do here? For example, if we write and segment is equal to consumer. So what has it done here? Order date, which is greater than that, and segment, which is just consumer. So it has applied two filters here. Similar to what we'll do it in Excel. For example, order date, we'll filter it down. Since we have just greater than 2020, so it will have all the entries of 2021. You click on OK. And segment, you want, okay, I think all the filters were already applied. Yeah. So this is the same thing which is being done here, right? And you see the number of rows here are 1668, similar to this. Coming back to the second comment, which is the or segment. For example, in the same thing, we apply or. One second. Yeah, so Parth, to answer your question, what is the significance of semicolon at the end? See, it's not mandatory to write a semicolon, but it is always advisable to do so because it signifies that you've written one query. Right? For example, I need to have a look at many things here. Like just a second, this is a very good question. For example, it's select star from orders. So what we need to do is we need to have a look at the thing in which we want all the data set that we had, and we also want to see the result which we have obtained after writing of where clause. So if we apply a colon here, semicolon here, it signifies that this is the end of this query. We can execute both of the tables together. Because see, again, it's not a mandate, but it's always a good practice, right? Because, for example, as I mentioned, select, you can write it as, you can write it in smaller case, you can write it in a haphazard manner. But it's always a correct practice to follow that, right? Like to write it in caps or write it in a smaller case as well. But ultimately, it should be uniform throughout. So you can call it out of habit, but I always have a habit of, if I'm writing a bigger query, I always have a habit of applying semicolon at the end. Now coming back, so we did it. We saw what and clause did to the query. Now let's see what the or clause does. CO. So what the or clause is doing, firstly, it's checking where order date is equal to this. Okay, this returned one value. This returned consumer as well. Again, similarly here. Now see what happens in the second row we highlighted here. Second row, it checked order date is greater than this, return the whole column. Or means that either of the two statements should satisfy. And means both the statements should satisfy. In this, one of the statements satisfied that your order date was greater than 2020, it returned. Even though the segment was corporate here, but since one of the query was satisfied, it returned the value. Similarly, on the row 3, first clause which is there, that order date should be greater than that 2020. It's not fulfilling that, it's 2019. But again, if you go here, segment was consumer, so it returned it. So see, at the end of the day, it is like I am teaching you where to what does and clause do, what does or clause do. But in real life, you'll be getting scenarios where it would specifically not be written, right? Whether to use the and clause or the or clause. So the basic understanding has to be there that what is required out of the problem statement and what we are ultimately getting out of either writing the and clause or the or clause, right? Similarly, as I mentioned, the possibilities are endless here, right? As to what we want. So like city, you want to filter it with the help of the city, or you are say a country manager. You're just interested. Like firstly, we'll be seeing what are the distinct type of countries that are here. So the name of the column is country region. So if we run it here, so there is just one country here. Okay. For example, you are interested in a particular state of United States, right? We see what's distinct type of states which are there. So the name of the column is state. So yeah, there are about 49 states. I think Alaska is missing a United States, that's 50 states. So there are about 49 states. For example, you are an area sales manager of say Texas, and you're just interested in sales that you're receiving from Texas. So you go say state is equal to, and again, it's a string value, so it has to be enclosed in a single quote. It's Texas. So now if you run the query, you see the state column, if we look at, it's just showing the data related to our state, which is Texas. For example, in Texas, you are interested in a particular city, you can just do where city is equal to this. So see how convenient it is. And at the end of the day, it's just basic English, right? Select the name of the column from the table and where. Now coming, since we have worked on the string values, now coming to say the sales part, right? Like we're say, like I'll just show you that on Excel because we'll have a better idea. So you see number of profit values we see here, the profits which we are getting from a particular set of while selling a particular item. There are number of negative items as well here, right? You see number of negative items. In an Excel, it's very easy to sort. You can do number filters here. You can do greater than, and you can click 0 and you'll get the return. For example, you are the sales manager, and again, you want to see, right, what are the items and what are the sales which are giving me a negative profit? Because obviously, yeah, no one wants to sell a commodity or sell a thing which is returning, which is giving us losses. So similarly, we can go to the where clause, where profit is less than 0. So less than 0 means it will return all the negative values, or let's do equal to less than equal to 0. We execute this. See, all the values which we are getting in the sales column are all the values which we are getting in the profit columns are less than 0. And this can help a manager to analyze what type of shipping mode, what type of consumer ID, what type of segment, country, region is collaborating us with the maximum of the negative profits. So it helps in the analyzing. See, again, I'll be repeating myself. Writing all these queries is very easy, right? As you can see, we are just writing three statements, we are getting our required answer. But the most important part at the end of the day is where are we using these queries? The end results matter, right? The end result, which is our data analysis part, that matters. As I mentioned, learning SQL is very easy. If I can learn it being from a non-tech background, then anyone can learn it. But the application part is the most important thing, and that comes only with practice, right? So now, and like you like see, 1 second, I'd like to show you something here. The query which I had written. See, since it was a numeric data, we did not have to include the single quotes here, right? With the numeric data, it can go with anything, but with the, say, the string data or the date column which we are working on, it has to be included in a single quote. Now, like anything which we want to see, for example, okay, for example, we want to see the sales from, let's come here. We want to see the quantity part for quantities which we are selling between, say, 1, 2, and 3. I'll just explain it to you. We are only interested in rows where the quantity sold is either 1 or 2 or 3. One of the way is to write, like, we can write a longer query, say quantity is equal to 1 or quantity is equal to 2 or quantity is equal to 3. This is one way of writing the query. Let's see what the result we get. So see, quantity 1, 2, or 3 it's returning. But this is a very tedious way to write it, right? For example, our statement was just 1, 2, 3. What if our statement was to find 1 to 10? It would have been a task, right, to write everything else like that. Yes, people can argue we can just copy paste and just change one value, but why do it if we have an option here? So there's one option, between statement, where quantity between 1 and 3. So this has returned 5710 rows. You can see it here. Let's see what does this return. It returns exactly that, which is, it is including quantities between 1 and 3. And it also includes the statement which we are putting it like 1 and 3. It also includes 1 and 3, and obviously 2 that comes in between. Like we can do 1 to 5, 1 to 3, anything that we want with just one statement. Otherwise, it would have been quantity 1 or 2 or 3. 1 to 5, it will return. So this makes our life very easy, and this we can do it in anything, right? For example, we are interested in sales between, say, we just want to look at our higher order values. Like say sales more than between 100 and 1000 or 200 or 1000, like anything that we do. Like sales between, say, 100 and 300. It shows exactly that, the sales which are between 100 and 300. So see how easy it is, right? So because we are returning the sales, but always keep it in mind, this is one of the very popular interview questions again, that the between statement, it also has the value which is 100 and 300. Like we saw it in quantities, it was including 1, 2, and 3 because the statement was between 1 and 3. So see, between 100 and 3, so the interview question usually asks us that, does it include 100 or does it include 300? The answer is a short yes, it includes that. Now, like further drilling down to it, we just want sales between 100 and 300. And we also want to see, say, region should only be south. We execute it. See, region is only south. and the sales are between 100 and 300. If we write the or version or statement here, see, I'd just like to tell one more thing. Just have a look at the number of rows when we use the and thing. That was 297. Okay. Once we use the or, you will see the number of rows will increase eventually. See, 3187. That's a drastic increase, right? So always keep it in mind. And statement always decreases the row, or statement will always and always increase. There's no other way. Because let's apply some logic. Or is this 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 condition or this condition, and checks both. So the probability, or it makes sense, right? The probability of both the statements checking out is obviously less than either of them checking out. So and statement always decreases the row, or statement will always and always increase the number of rows. Like you saw that from 150 odd, it increased up to 3187 rows. There, for example, if we want to see, there were a number of states, right? If we wanted to see state is equal to, say, Florida, and we also want to see the data for state equal to, say, Texas. When we run this query, it's showing state either Florida or Texas. But these are just 2 states, right? What if I am interested in, say, 5 states or 6 states? Again, it's a tedious task, right? So there is one more keyword here, states in, and you can write whatever states you want. But it has to be in a single quote, like I mentioned. Florida, comma, Texas. So it returns exactly the same thing. And you can add as many values as you want. Here that you have to write state is equal to Florida, or state is equal to Texas, or state is equal to Nebraska. But here you can just add it in the in clause and you'll be able to run it through. Please keep in mind, in is equivalent to or. It is not equivalent to and. Whatever you included in the in clause would always be equal to or. Okay. So if you want any value here, say New York State. It will return that. See, state is showing New York, Texas, and Florida at the top. See how convenient it is? So there are a number of things which we can do from the where clause. 1 second. Ironic, what is the significance of semicolon? And I think Divya had already answered that. Yeah, so I'll answer it again. So Divya, it's not a mandate per se. You can, like, for example, if I didn't include a semicolon, right? But the query still was got through. And even if I write semicolon, it'll again go through. It's not a mandate, but it's always advisable to have good practices, right? You write a semicolon, in your mind, it is just a nudge that it's the end of this query. Like I had told, for example, in this, I want to see first of all my data as to where I'm working on, which is from select star from order. And then I want to see what our filtration I have done with the help of the where clause. I execute both these queries. It will still run through. It is always and always advisable that, but again, like if slowly and gradually, once you start writing queries, you won't realize it, but you will keep on adding, you'll immediately have that thing inbuilt that I want to have a semicolon at the end. Similarly, like, as I mentioned in the starting, select like can be written it in this, like, I'll just show it to you once. I had written it in the upper clause. Even if I write it in the lower clause, it will work. But it's looking so, like you can call it anything you want, but it's not looking pretty, right? And you also need to realize that here you're writing queries just for yourself. because you're doing a self project, you're doing any practicing any question. But when you work in a company, you will be writing queries for others to also understand at the end of the day. So it is always great to have these good practices that you're following it throughout. If you're writing it at the upper clause, like if you're writing from clause in the uppercase, why not write the select clause in the uppercase as well, right? So these are good practices which we need to follow, and semicolon at the end of is a part of it. I hope I answered your question. Sure. So now coming to order by. So we'll be listening to order by. So what is order by? Order by is like in Excel, you can tell it is equivalent to the sort. For example, I am just interested in the sales. I want to sort my table in accordance with the sales value, for example. So I write select star from orders, order by sales. So we execute it. It's showing it has sorted our table in the ascending order of the sales value. Similarly, if we want to do it by the descending thing, we can do it that as well. Like here, we just need to change DESC instead of ASC. It has done exactly opposite of that. The sales, it has sorted in accordance with the descending order. For example, if I don't include anything here and just order by sales, by default, it is always the ascending order. By default, it is always going to be sorted by the ascending order, I beg your pardon. But again, speaking of good practices, we always need to include ASC keyword here. Because again, right, this query should be that easy to read that it can be understood by anyone who has just been through one session of SQL, right? So always ASC is ascending order, DESC is the descending order. So always it is good practice to have it in ASC keyword included. Even if you don't do it, the query is going to run, but it looks good at the end of the day. And as I mentioned, you are creating queries not just for yourself, but for others to have an equal access to, right? So always it's good to have it in the ascending order. Now, for example, we are just interested, say, in the top 5 values, which are getting us, in accordance with the descending order of the sales. We're just interested in the top 5 value, the top 5 orders which have produced the maximum sales for us. I'll just explain to what does top do. So yeah, I'll explain the query afterwards. So what it has done is it has sorted your query in the descending order, and then due to the top 5 command, it has given us the top 5 values. What does this top 5 done is, others are also been working on some other RDBMS. It can be PostgreSQL. In that, instead of top clause, we use the limit clause. So it is the top clause is always written with the select query. It's not the logical way. I don't know why SQL Server does that, but logically it should be at the end, because how much values do we want? But this is how the syntax is. No one can help in that. So in other RDBMS, it's always the limit. Like instead of the top, we use limit 5 in the end. Limit 5, and the top 5 clause is not included here. Obviously, in this RDBMS, it won't run. But if you exactly copy paste this into another RDBMS, say Oracle or Postgre, it would run exactly the same. But here, it's always the top clause which is written with that. So it has coming how it works. Firstly, from the table, it ordered by in accordance with the sales in the descending order as it mentioned, and it showed us the top 5 value. Another very popular problem statement can be that tell us the customer name. Again, I'm repeating, tell us the customer name which is fetching us the highest sales. So anyone can answer, how can we do that? Using just all these statements which we have taught right now. I'll repeat my question. We just need the name of the customer, which is giving us the highest number of sales in that particular row. Anyone? Okay, no worries. I think everyone is new to SQL then. Yeah. So what we'll do is we just want the customer name. So we obviously won't be using the star which returns everything. We just be writing customer underscore name. And we just want one value, right? So we'll do top one. This returns Sean Miller. And if we come here, we come to top 5 and we do star, which with the query which we had previously written. Sure, sir. So yeah. So see here, if we come, it's Sean Miller. And exactly like we did it in that top one, customer name for Sean Miller, right? So see, it is easy at the end of the day, but the application part is the most important thing. Like you see, right? It's not at all difficult writing these 3 lines, right? It's just, it hardly takes 10 seconds to write. But the application part is the most important of all. Now coming to one more important, which is the wildcard. Wildcard. Always a good practice to see whatever table that you have, any query which you are writing. First of all, see what data are you working on exactly. First, have a look at the table and then only think as to how to approach the query. So yeah, this is our table. For example, you are required to find the name of the customer. That's the customer name, whose name starts with C or start with any letter that you want. I hope you got my question. That, for example, you want to find the number of rows or the rows where we just need the name of the customers starting with the number C, starting with the letter C, I beg your pardon. So all this wildcard would be done in where. Makes sense, right? Because where is the clause where all the filtering is done. So why not this? So we come to where customer name, customer underscore name, like. There's a keyword for a wildcard. There's always a keyword like. Since it's a string, we have to enclose it in single quotes. We mentioned C. So C is in the uppercase. Though SQL is not uppercase, but all the rows which are fit in there are uppercase. I'll just show it to you how it is. C with a percentage. From customer name, it's showing an error. 1 second. What have I done wrong? Okay.
There
Oh,
is a
see, I
comma.
closed the query. Yeah, got it. I closed the query. So see, the customer name, all the customer names starting with the letter C are there, which is 818 in totality. This is one thing. As I mentioned, SQL is not uppercase sensitive, but the rows are. Since the first letter has been starting with the letter C, which is a capital letter, we need to enter a capital C, and percentage means anything after that. Like you can see C, it can be Carl Weiss here, it can be Corey as well, it can be Carol as well. Percentage means anything post the letter C. So for example, and talking about the case sensitivity in the row part, if we enter small c with a percentage, it would not return anything. Let's have a look. Oh, returned. I beg your pardon. 1 second. I don't know. I think the backend, while creating a schema here, things would have changed. Ideally, it is not allowed. ideally it doesn't work that way. So while creating a schema, there would be an option to untick it if you want to make it case sensitive, but it's always a good practice to do it in the case it is given. Okay. And for example, you want to see in which the second letter of a string is C. So to signify one thing is always a hyphen, and to signify multiple things, there's always a percentage. So we write hyphen C, and if we execute it, okay, there's no name in the database which has a second letter C. One second. For example, we wanted A. A, I'm sure many people would have second letter. Hold on, wait a second. Why is it not working? A, okay. One second. Though. Hmm. I don't know what's the error is here. One second. Okay. One second. Why hyphen is not working? Is it not supported? One second, I'll just check. See, it can be the case while you are also working, even if you know a bit about it, you would not get it. So last time, as I mentioned, there is a site by the name of V3 School. You can always, like any query that you have, you can just write it here and they would have an answer to it. Just like have a look, like operator. See, it's showing with the help of an underscore. I am not sure as to why it is not working. Nonetheless, in the next session, I think I'll be able to, I'll read about it as to maybe because in other SQL Server it would 100% work. It can be the case that the SQL query doesn't, SQL Server doesn't support it. But nonetheless, your logic should be correct at the end of the day. And like you can see, like it also accepts underscore as well. So I'm not sure why it is not working. By the next class, I'll give you the answer to it. So now just working just last thing which we can do here. For example, we want to know a person whose name is starting with a name and an ending with a particular letter, say B or A. So let's run it. I'll just explain it to as to what's working behind it. See, it's showing the customer name whose name is Alex, starting with a name and ending with a name, which is Avilia. So what it is doing here, a percentage, percentage as I mentioned can have anything that you want it in between. It can also have a number in between as well. Please keep it in mind. So a starting with an A, between it can have anything at once and ending with an E, ending with a small a, right? So it's showing exactly that. So this is what like operator was about. So just to wrap up the session, firstly, we discussed the unique values which we use it in Excel with the help of the distinct keyword here, followed by the from clause, the where clause. In the where clause, we worked upon the or and the and functions as to what's the difference between it. And always keep it in mind, and always decreases the rows or always adds up to the rows. Then we worked a bit upon the in clause as well, which is a substitute of the or clause and the between clause. We also worked on the between clause. Then we worked a bit upon the order by statements, in which we can sort the data by the ascending order and the descending order. And lastly, we worked upon the wildcard option. I'll keep it in mind as to why the underscore is not working. Maybe it's not supported in SQL Server. I'll get back to you by next class. Any questions? Anyone has it in mind? Anyone? It's great that everyone has learned everything. Any questions? Anyone? Okay, yeah, so I think I'll just wrap it up. And since Havish sir is my mentor, as I mentioned in the call, Havish sir, I think you wanted to discuss something with the students, right? Hello. Okay, Divya has a question. Okay, Divya. How to write the query for the first name and the last name starting with an A? How to write the query for the first name and the last name? Okay, so for that, Divya, we'll discuss it in the next session. I have it planned. It's with the left clause, right? So what I'll just show you the glimpse of it. I'll just show you the glimpse of it. One second. Customer name. You won't understand it. Just one second. Heading the other columns. See, just keep both these columns in mind. One is the customer name, other is this, right? So we did left. Left is starting from the left. It is just equivalent to the left function in Excel. So what it did here, customer name Tamara, and you wrote this clause, select left customer name, which is the customer name column, comma 1. So it sorted out the left thing for you, which is T here. For example, you wanted the second letter of it. It will return TA in this case because TA. For example, Divya, for you, if we write left customer name 1, it will return D. If we write left customer name and you're there in the column and we write 2, it will return DI. For the last name, what we do is I'll tell you the logic behind it and we'll write the query from the next class. The logic behind it is that we need to find the next space that there is. With that, we do it with the help of function which is substring. So substring and the char index function which is there, which helps us to find the name, which helps us to find the position of the space. In your case, for example, DIVYA, Divya, and the space comes in at the 6th place. It will find the 6th place and then we apply the left function to it and the comma 1. So it will return G. I know it will sound a bit confusing. In the next session, we'll do that. I have it on my agenda. And the next session, we'll be also discussing about the group by clause and the aggregate functions as well. So the next class would be just like this, a bit longer only, about 1 hour. But I have to discuss it in the next session. Glad that you asked it. It will be on my mind. So I'll just wrap it up.